Let's not worry about the time when people are maybe getting inspired by our ideas or maybe even stealing our ideas. Let's worry about a time when people don't care about our ideas.
And can't treat humans as edge cases. We have to put them at the foundation.
We need to unlearn, learn, and relearn.
Giving yourself and the team permission to know that it's a journey. Many companies are one announcement away by a large tech company from basically losing their main business line.
We'll get started in a few minutes. This is a popular topic because we have more than 100 registrations, about 120.
Wow.
While we are waiting, why don't everybody put in the chat window where you're from and maybe one or two words to describe how you're feeling right now. So let's get to know each other a little bit. The virtual world, right? We can connect this way. Hard, frustrated traffic. All right. Feeling curious to learn more and curious, overwhelmed or underwhelmed. Okay. Great and ready to learn. Looking forward. Nice. It's always nice to see like all the different place from which people are coming from, both physically and from mentally, right? So we'll see how things shift for us through this session. We'll probably get started in one more minute. All right, folks, welcome to the Centered CxO discussion here today. My name is Preethy Padmanabhan. Professionally, I am an EIR and CMO. I work with venture funds and with companies, startups and big companies. I also teach the meditation and Skybreath programs, as well as the TLEX, the Transformation Leadership for Excellence programs. Just a note, we are recording this session today because a lot of people had signed up and we'd love for everybody to get this whole webinar offline. So, TLEX Institute, let me give you a little bit of background about TLEX Institute. TLEX stands for Transformational Leadership for Excellence. Our focus is on resilience training, on leadership skills development. All of you who are joined here are leaders from across different organizations. And we have designed lots of trainings and delivered them for executives, mid-level management, and teams. And here is our agenda for today. So we will kick off with a focused panel discussion with fantastic speakers. They will introduce themselves. You already must have seen their profiles while you signed up. We have 3 CxOs who are going to talk about their personal journey of how they are leading as Centered CxOs. Following that, we'll do a 5-minute centering exercise to see the impact of powerful breathing techniques on how we operate. And then we'll follow that with Q&A, and we'll also provide an overview on TLEX. So that is our plan for today. I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to spotlight all the speakers here today so that we can get started with our conversation. I already introduced myself. I'm going to pass to Arun to introduce himself.
Perfect. Preethy and the TLEX team, thank you so much for having us, and thank you so much for organizing this session. It's definitely a very well needed and session that a lot of people would take benefit from. And it's wonderful for me to be having this conversation with you and the rest of the panelists and of course all attendees. I'm Arun Subramaniyan. I'm the founder and CEO of Articulate. We are an enterprise Gen AI startup which was focused on building large-scale enterprise-level deployments for generative AI deployments across energy, aerospace, automotive, telecommunications, financial services, and other industries also. So looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Arun. Bhaskar?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Preethy and the TLX team for having us. It's a real pleasure to be there with the TLX again, and looking forward to interacting with everyone. My name is Bhaskar Maddala. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for a AI startup called Genie AI, and also as an advisor for some of the pharmaceutical companies based out of New Jersey and Israel.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Sherri?
Hi, Preeti. Please forgive that I downloaded a Zoom update and restarted my computer. So I think I'm going to need to find a Genius bar. And so please forgive the lack of the video. But I'm so honored to be here with you again and with these esteemed panelists. And I'm Sherri Douville, CEO of Metagram and chair of the Trustworthy Technology Innovation Consortium. And so what I do is I work at the intersection of healthcare, AI, and infrastructure. So our stakes are clinical, financial, reputational, building systems to protect outcomes where it matters most, focused on healthcare initially. And in healthcare, we have a challenge where doctors are really being pushed to the edge. We're letting patients, fall through the cracks. Um, Families are frustrated. They want answers. So what we're dealing with is not really a tech gap. It's really more of a trust gap. And so what I'm focused on in my work is really values around accountability to the real work. And looking at what happens when systems fail, not just in theory, but really in the ICU. So we're not talking about just the bad actors that we have to protect against in terms of like cyber attacks and things like that, but about coordination, missing coordination, bad data, like fallback, when you have a play or a pass that breaks down. So what I focus on is in terms of mindset, which is what I'm looking forward to chatting with the panelists about today, is protecting people, doing the real work, and making sure that we're protecting real stakes, life, death, and public trust, that earns staying power. And that's what I'm excited to speak with you about today.
Fantastic. As you can see, we have assembled a panel with a broad range of expertise from different areas. Before we go to the main themes of the discussion, I would love to hear from each of you. What does it mean to be a centered CxO to you? I'll start with Bhaskar this time.
Yeah, thanks, Preeti. So let me put it, I think the organization, right? I mean, in the current world, if you look at it, right, one thing is emerging very fast and very clearly that you need to constantly innovate, constantly. And I think that is something which, and we have to do really quite good in a smart way. And to innovate, I mean, innovation, you need to have a proper motivation for the team. And to motivate the team, right? I mean, we need to be a centered. I mean, the CXO or the team leading that need to be quite centered. What does that mean? You need to be humble. You need to be, quite humble and grounded. You need to be open to feedback across a 360-degree feedback. You need to lead. Give the confidence to the team, whoever, right? That it is okay to make mistakes. It is okay to take a risk in the interest of the organization, right? It is not okay to be, stagnant and to play safe. That kind of a motivation is required to do that. I mean, just give the confidence to the team that you are there, right, to protect. If they fall down or if something happens, you are there to cover for them. That is required, and that is what I call it as a very centered CXO.
That is fantastic. Great insights on being humble while taking feedback and taking the right risks for the organization. I turn to Arun for his input.
So I think that's a fantastic point that Bhaskar made. And really, for me, being centered really means giving yourself and the team permission to know that it's a journey. It's not about knowing all the answers. It's not about doing the right thing all the time or getting it right all the time, but really giving yourself permission to know that it's okay to take risks and be um, available when the risks actually don't go the way you think it's going to go. But that's really what is the main thing. But the other piece is, if you take a step back, today it feels like we're in a world which has moving faster than it ever has. It feels like it's a world that's changing faster than it ever has. However, if you go back several hundred years, no time in history, at that point in time, the people living in that point would have said, this time feels slower than yesterday. The change has always been there. The rate of change is probably faster today than it was there before. I'll give you that. However, being centered also means focusing on things that do not change. There are some things that you need to focus on. The things like people always want high quality things at the lowest price point possible. They want to make sure that they're making a difference. They want to feel like what they're doing is important and delivering value. Now, if you think about what is changing and focus on what is changing, which is also necessary to make sure the business is important, it is very easy to get into this mode of not caring about what is most important or what doesn't change. Right? It's really the balance between the two. And I'm like guilty of this on a daily basis where in the middle of the day-to-day firefights that you have to deal with, you sometimes forget why you're doing something. And it's having that back and forth every day at least to make sure that you have the time to think through it. And also, most importantly, your team has the permission or gives themselves the permission to go have that balance. Right? That's really what it means to me. And I would say, I'm not there yet. It's a daily journey to keep going. And it is important for the team to know that you are also in that journey with them. It's not like I have all the answers and the team is like has to come along. Right?
Yeah. No, I think you actually reflected what Bhaskar was talking about on being humble while also knowing how to, like, know it's a journey and how to know between what's changing and not changing. Such powerful insights. Sherry, would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to build on that by saying like a centered CEO is also thinking about all the stakeholders that you impact, that you need to team up with. That it's not just about you. And I grew up in Silicon Valley, and I really just cringe every time people talk about like the genius in the garage, because that's really not the way things can get done, and it's not really the way things should be done. And we live in so much complexity, and anything that was really worth anything is really a team of teams. And so to me that means, how do you optimize, and how are you the catalyst of that, and the orchestrator of that team of teams, and staying really centered and grounded around that. And so just to keep it super real, someone close to me had a medical emergency years ago, and what happened in that ICU, despite being one of the most well-resourced hospitals in the country, it wasn't a failure of effort or intelligence, but really a breakdown in coordination, communication, and really infrastructure. And so what I really saw then was that it really changed who I was as a person and what I was meant to do, in terms of changing that coordination and that communication, and really the calling to really build that infrastructure. And being a centered CEO to me means really anchoring to the reality that what has to be built is systems that cannot fail when it matters the most. So we live in an era where capital is incredibly volatile, and it's driven towards very aggressive timelines. We are also in an era of AI exuberance, where people want to drive AI. They don't even really know how to make it deploy for any kind of outcome, or really safely, or for really any purpose. Just really, very fraudy. And so as a CEO, staying centered is really about being really grounded and remembering who really carries the risk. What is that risk? It's multi-layered, it's multifactorial, it's mutating, it's probabilistic, ensuring that really execution really honors the trust related to those risks. It's the patient, it's the spouse of that patient, it's their children, It's the physician that really holds the real risk in their hearts. So it's like my vision is that the world where healthcare systems operate with trust and precision, even under pressure, because that pressure is already here. We are in a situation where a lot of health systems are probably not going to survive. And so anything less really disrespects the pressure that a lot of executives, healthcare executives, are under today, really putting lives and careers at risk. And that's what being grounded means to me.
Wow, fantastic, Sherri. I think you almost like had a sneak peek into the next question on top, sharing a personal story, right? Each of you have navigated significant changes and technology in your career. Would love to hear a couple more personal stories of how you've stayed centered and resilient while leading to transformation, and how did that shape your leadership approach? I'll start with Arun.
I can give you a couple of examples, right? So, like if you look at my current job, right? So it's leading an AI startup in an area where pretty much every startup on the planet is an AI startup, and everybody is vying for the same customers, and everybody is more or less vying for similar features, right? And what happens is it used to be the case, like what Bhaskar mentioned, that change happens and then it's fast, you have to keep innovating. And it used to be that you've got something innovative in the products, you have, say, a differentiation for 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year, if you're lucky, and you get to build your moat on top of it. We live in a world where, rightfully or wrongfully, after spending $15 billion, Satya Nadella says he doesn't have a moat in the world of AI. So really, anybody who's kidding, like say, thinking that they have a moat in this world is just kidding themselves. Now, like just fast forward that a little bit. Think of a team that you have to lead, which is a team of highly accomplished individuals who have taken a risk to come to a startup. They've left lucrative careers to do that because they believe that they can do something. And they've actually built something very innovative. And it's something that is truly differentiating, which a customer actually loves. Right? So the truly innovative thing was there. But then within a matter of a few days, sometimes even a few hours, what you thought was super like cool, what the customers were delighted by, becomes table stakes. Now, the real existential threat is actually even worse because it might be many companies are one announcement away by a large tech company from basically losing their main business line. So when you're dealing with that kind of pressure, it's not just about being technically innovative, it's also about saying we need to change our practices ourselves. So you ask for the personal story, this is our life daily, right? So it's just daily, that's one thing. The other side of being centered is you can't let that existential threat paralyze you. If you do, you can't really be in a startup, but even more so in the world of AI. And even more so if you think that you are in a really cool technology space where you are the coolest kids in the block. So it keeps you humble, it keeps you centered automatically, but it also has to do with knowing that whatever you build is only like important on a time-bound basis in a very, very small period of time. It's about thinking about how do you build and scale. That's one. And for us, that's a personal journey really is. This happened not once, not twice. It pretty much happens to us every week. Where that is an actual paid feature from an actual customer becomes a natural extension of something else. So we have to keep moving. And the other thing I'll also say that we've learned through a lot of painful iterations is the lot of conversations we used to have is, do we really put this out there? Do we really have to be open about it? Because what if somebody else takes this on? And the tongue-in-cheek answer to that I have for my team, which ended up becoming the rallying cry is, let's not worry about the time when people are maybe getting inspired by our ideas or maybe even stealing our ideas. Let's worry about a time when people don't care about our ideas. That's far worse. And also, in a world which is moving so fast, it's really about who can deliver what they're promising to deliver. It's very easy to show demos, it's very easy to show little toys. Delivering at value, delivering at scale, showing up matters. And like somebody put on this chat, resilience matters. It's really resilience plus perseverance matters, and that's really the story that keeps happening daily to us, whether we like it or not. And it's just something that we need to get used to. And being centered and thinking about it repeatedly is not a matter of, oh, it's a nice to have. That is really what is giving us our core differentiation. Right.
That's wonderful. You're touching all the key things that we talk about in TLEX with the resilience. And Arun, I know you mentioned about having a centering practice every day. Tell us a little bit about that. Like, what got you into that, and how does that help you on a daily basis?
So my centering practice is, and I must confess here, I'm not a full-blown practicing, say, meditation practitioner, which I'd like to be. But what meditation for me looks like is really silence, which is as strange as it sounds. I used to be, not so long ago, the person who rolls into bed with my phone just falling off my hands and getting off the bed with my phone in my hand. Right? So it's like constant, it never ends no matter where I go. All I did to change it to get into the habit really was for half an hour before I fall asleep, I do not touch any device. And most of the time I fall asleep way too late, so nobody's there to talk to anyway. That's on one side. When I wake up, it's the same story. And that alone, just that alone, without doing anything, I'm doing my day-to-day normal activities, but not looking at anything, talking to anybody, looking at a screen or anything, started this practice where silence actually gives me back in volumes. So my practice almost on a daily basis really is half an hour of complete silence.
How many of us are ready to take up that challenge, folks? Half an hour before, going to bed, and half an hour when we wake up, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. You can put on the chat window how this is inspiring you. Let's hear from Bhaskar. Bhaskar, I know you've also been, having all these techniques, and you've stayed centered and resilient while leading through transformation. And you also talked about the story of how you reduced some AI implementation time by 80 to 90%. Tell us a little bit about some of those things that from your background and your story.
Sure, I think, but one thing, Preeti, sorry, the implementations and what I completely agree with what Arun said. What was an innovation yesterday, today is completely commoditized, right? I mean, I can tell you there are, like, my previous role was with a global automotive organization as its CEO. And when I was hired and appointed as a CEO, my role, the objective was to transform they had about 100 factories worldwide, and to transform from legacy manufacturing to smart manufacturing, right? And at that point of time, it felt like innovation. And mind you, I mean, I had never seen a shop floor in my life. So that was probably one of the reasons they hired me, because they didn't want anyone who's institutionalized, who's very, used to the way of things, how it goes around with that. They wanted someone to come completely out of new ideas, new fresh thoughts, and do that. And yes, definitely it helped, because I had to look at it from a very technology perspective, looking at AI solutions, IoT solutions, how they can be implemented to reduce, right, and completely transform a legacy manufacturing into a smart manufacturing, giving a lot of operational efficiency, cost reduction, saving in terms of that, and new revenue channels too, right? And this was a very interesting thing. But I think what I learned from that is that in this era, it is even more important. One of the key drivers or principles I have now realized is that we need to unlearn, learn, and relearn. We have to unlearn a lot of things what we have come up, and as with with what is more relevant for the time, right? We have to learn that irrespective of what it is. We should not be shy away. You should not shy from thinking that I'm not going to do this, or probably I'm going to stick with something. No, take every opportunity what comes to you as a learning experience, right? And you have to constantly relearn. There is nothing which is constant going to be. I can give, I mean, this organization in the automotive world, right? We started building, connecting all, about 10,000 odd machines, 3,000 industrial robots, 35,000 employees. We started interconnecting everything. We were generating huge amount of data. We said, what do you do with this? We started then developing co-pilots. And this was when was probably 2021, much before ChatGPT popularized it. And it took about 9 months for us to build a simple co-pilot. And then a couple of years back with this company, Genie, we started building a platform where we can build co-pilots within one single day. The same effort what used to take 9 months, we could build it within one single day. And this felt like a big innovation. Fast forward a year later, we see that dime a dozen. A lot of places building such kind of things, right? We got to innovate. How do you do that? And that's what I feel that, the motivating the team, taking them along. Innovation is not anymore one single person's agenda. It is an enterprise, it is a corporate agenda, it is something which everyone in the organization needs to connect with and be passionate about. Only then it will it will actually move successfully, right? I mean, I remember, I think about a long time back, probably about 25 years old back, I was with an IT company, global IT company. I was leading the innovation agenda, working on the business process management. And we had three rookie engineers joined that time, just fresh out of college, and they were there. And these three, so one of this girl, that was actually, in fact, my birthday. So I was trying to wrap up my work and go home for a dinner with the family. And the whole office had left except this one girl, and she was in a corner, quite stressed out. I didn't realize. I mean, so I went to her and said everything was okay, and then I saw that she was quite stressed, very afraid, because she was newbie, because she didn't know how to do. Her manager had allocated some task to her. She didn't know how to do that. So I sat with her for an hour or so, explained each step by step. We walked through. We said, okay, this is how we do that, and she was so happy with that. She learned. Trust me, she went on to become the most valuable employee in the whole team the next 1 year, right? I mean, she got the motivation to do the innovation, and she was not afraid of anything to do that. And the same thing for the other two young rookie engineers too. So one of them was a just fresh out of an MBA grad, and the other was an MTech grad. These two girls went on. They went to Calcutta at that point of time to actually train them, the team, on a new technology which they have been working on and innovating. Just about 3 months experience. They went there. They saw that they didn't have the team were not very motivated, and they were a different vendor team, external team. They were not really coping up with that. And so they asked me, what do I? They said, you have the full onus. I mean, take the responsibility, drive it. The one rookie engineer took the role of a project manager. The other rookie engineer took the role of an architect. They drove the entire project, and it's a Japanese project, very tight on deadlines and on quality. They delivered the whole project on time. So what it taught me is that if you give them the freedom, tell them not to be afraid, and not to be afraid of failures, I think there is a higher scope of innovation which comes up from there. My What I've learned over the years is that that's what I think we need to be grounded, is just encouraging them, being yourself, leading it with an example, being grounded, encouraging the team to take up more and more responsibilities, to take up challenging work without the fear of failure. And this is what I have also experienced in my journey. I've been very fortunate to work under some very good supervisors who taught me exactly the same, and which has quite helped me.
Just so powerful. Amazing stories. Each of you are sharing such wisdom. And you led straight to the next topic, Bhaskar, which is how do you build organizational culture for collaboration, for productivity, right? We are now going to be working AI alongside humans. We started talking about that. And how do you prioritize people as catalysts for innovation, collaboration? I'll start with Sherri here because I know, Sherri, you talked a lot about healthcare and trust. Tell us a little bit of some of the techniques or some of the frameworks that you have implemented for organizational resilience.
Well, yeah, I just think that healthcare is kind of ground zero for partnering with people because you can't really get work done without people in healthcare because people are the ones that deliver care, and it's the last thing to really be fully automated. Whereas there's other types of titles that really can be really more automated with AI, and so we really have to design the systems with people, and we really have to give clinicians really override authority in a lot of these systems. And so I do think it's a huge mistake when you start with the algorithm or model, specifically in high risk systems where the liability and the accountability and like things like lawsuits, where there's people that are on the other side of that. And so healthcare is not the only industry like that. It's just where there's the most pressure, right? And so at Metagram and also our consortium that we run, TTIC, we model the flow of risk and responsibility really before we write code. So we start with the operator. So who sees what, who's accountable, can they act in time? So that's how we prioritize people. So we don't prioritize them in like a fluffy, let's hug everybody sort of way, although there's a place and time for that as well. But it's more like, as leaders, we have to act as safety valves. We really have to be the validators. So, and this isn't just like a theory, it's something that we operationalize as AI governance. So we don't and can't treat humans as edge cases. We have to put them at the foundation. So any system that wants to say anything about doing real work under real constraints, like an environment like healthcare, our work is about making trust operational in a healthcare system. So we build infrastructure that can't collapse at the edge. And so I agree with our co-panelists that you want to encourage people to take on responsibility, because we talk about an enormous amount of responsibility in healthcare where you're converging engineering with clinical operations, with those ethical requirements, with enormous regulatory requirements, and we take those responsibilities really seriously, and we drive that through our values of accountability, clarity, and respect for the stakes of the pressures that the C-suite and the workforce have. But to me, I really want and believe that people can count on us not to trade short-term optics for the resilience that we all want to count on as patients and as family members when people's lives and futures are really on the line, like they are in a situation like healthcare, and really any high reliability type environment, whether that's aerospace or pro sports or anything like that.
Great. I think you covered a lot of ground in terms of how to be people-centered. I have another interesting point that I want to also discuss with Arun. I know, Arun, you called your team as humble gangsters. So tell us a little bit about that. How do you build your team culture and have that unique contribution?
Yeah, so that the phrase coining was interesting. Somebody had asked me to describe our culture in one word. And if it is really one word, I would choose humility, because without that, you really don't move forward. You really need to have the humility to know that you don't have all the answers. You need to constantly keep learning. And especially in the world that we talked about, in terms of innovating at a pace that has never happened before, without humility, you just don't innovate. That's the main thing. But the reason why I asked for it needs to be a two-word thing, which is humble gangster, really is the gangster portion of it is around having hustle. It is really around the mentality that we may be small, we may have very limited resources, however, our ambitions are very, very big. We're here to make a positive difference in the world in everything we do, and we're not bound by the resources that we have today. It's really around how do we take what we have and make an outsized impact with the world, right? And to your point of how do we build a culture and how do we build to make sure that our people are more resilient, we are an AI company building tools for the enterprise. Our customer zero is ourselves. So if we can't use our tools to get ourselves to be a lot more effective, then we can't really sell that to our customers. That's number one. The second thing is we also constantly reinforce the point that we live in a world of abundance, meaning the way economy works is not that if you find something more efficient to do, an efficient way of doing something, that we just reduce our total output. Or we keep the total output be the same, which means we reduce the number of people involved. We figure out a way to also actually increase our total output. So the economy keeps growing because of that. And the mindset of abundance really is from the perspective of we find a way to get ourselves to be 5x faster, we do 5x more. If we find a way to get 10x faster, we do 10x more. We have no intention of reducing our workforce. Right? So it's really around making sure that the workforce is more effective and doing that in a way which enriches their life as they go along.
I love it.
The tools we build, the mind twist really is we're building it for ourselves. We just happen to sell it to our customers.
Wonderful. Yeah, exactly. I think that the whole thing about abundance, right? Knowing that you're operating in abundance, I love that. In fact, I named my own company as 10x Growth. And so I completely resonate with what you said. And I know folks are getting ready with their questions and they're sharing that. Before we jump into questions, we had promised to do like a short centering exercise. We'll take a few minutes as a group to do that, and I will lead you all through this. And this technique is called the straw breath technique. And it's very simple. All of us have used a straw. So what we're going to do is we're going to close our eyes in a minute, and then we're going to breathe in through our nose, and then breathe out like we are breathing out into a straw. So we breathe in through our nose and breathe out into the straw very slowly, right? Very slowly. So we can all close our eyes and let's take a deep breath in through our nose and breathe out through our mouth like a straw. Breathe in through our nose and breathe out through the straw. And let's continue doing that for a few more times on our own. And notice the state of your mind. Do a couple more rounds and gently come back to normal breath. Gently relax your body. And slowly and gradually become aware of your body and surroundings. And taking your own time, when you feel complete, you may open your eyes. You can share in the chat how that felt, and speakers, you can share how it was.
Quite peaceful,
Very good.
calm.
Calm. Very nice. Just 3 minutes, right, of breathing. Very nice. So I think one question, very nice, simple and effective, excellent. Right? We can just do this anytime, isn't it, at our desk? That's the beauty of these breathing techniques. So there's one question from Shiva. I know, Sherri, you already addressed it briefly, but the question is, how can centered leadership principles be integrated in digital transformation and training initiatives when teams are navigating tool fatigue or change resistance? Does anybody want to take that?
I can maybe start. So one of the things that's been very effective, might be counterintuitive, is when to tell the team that instead of telling them do something, tell them don't do it unless you can find a real need for it. And magic actually happens because the same team that was resisting, saying, hey, why are we doing this? This is yet another tool, yet another transformation. We just went through one 12 months ago. Goes, are you telling us that we have the freedom to do what we think is needed? And you have to, of course, put the guardrails a little bit. And it goes one step beyond that to say, actually, you tell them what it's not needed at all. If you say that nothing is needed, don't do anything. Don't use the tool if you don't find useful. All we are saying is here are a set of tools you're authorized to use. You have to be better at your outcomes. In between, we really don't care whether you use the tools or not. Magic happens because every single time, pretty much all the tools get used in different ways. It may not be used in exactly the same way you prescribe it, but they end up getting used. But they get used in a way that the person can measure, that they can see outcome. The problem is when there is a top-down mandate saying, look, thou shalt use this tool, or this combination of tools, no matter what your context is. And then it's very hard to guess everybody's context in a complex environment. That's when waste happens, because then they'll use the tool without necessarily wanting it and actually get worse than where they started.
Yeah, I just want to build. I want to build. Yeah, so that's why we have to have multidisciplinary work in healthcare, and we have to remember what the goal is. And the goal is making sure that the patient outcome is getting delivered, and that the physician satisfaction is getting delivered, and that the P&L outcome for the organization is getting delivered. And for that to happen, we have to have humble technologists that are willing to work with clinicians. And what that means for us in terms of a hiring and retention process is it means a very specific profile, the type of engineer who has an identity around service, who has an identity around wanting to be not that they're a healthcare person, not that they're a technology person. It's that they have a calling of being a hybrid healthcare technology person. And so they have to form a new identity that's about serving healthcare with a hybrid of healthcare and technology. And the reason why I'm talking about that is I immigrated into technology from having worked and being raised professionally at Johnson & Johnson. And so I'm actually imprinting like a life sciences. I build standards for technology to be used in healthcare so that doctors and CFOs can understand what's happening with technology in healthcare. Because most software or a lot of software really is not understandable to CFOs, to rating agencies, to physician societies, to their boards. And so we focus on making it understandable, making it measurable, making the risk measurable and understandable. And so the kinds of technologists that can actually be successful in healthcare are very are unique, but not in the way that people think. They're unique in that they're very humble, and that they want to be part of a community that's really about service. And so their identity is about serving the patient and serving the clinician and serving the organization. It's really not about serving their ego. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the problem with tools is that tools have communities. And so that's not bad. But what I found really interesting, and so I had to learn a lot of tools, which was fine for me because I have a physics background. So I got into coding and all that, and I do code a lot of things myself. I don't push it into production, but I do have to prototype it so I can communicate with engineers. And what I found was a lot of these coding and tool communities were like, they're like holy wars of you guys know what I'm talking about, right? You're laughing because you know exactly what I'm talking about. And we just can't have that in healthcare. You can't have engineers and communities of tools warring against each other over basically fraternities because that's not serving the patient, right? And so we have to build, that's why I say community is your immunity. We have to have new kinds of communities that are multidisciplinary of a combination of the full stack of technology with clinicians where they're serving a higher purpose of serving the patient, serving the organizations, and it's not about the tool communities. And I hope I don't get a bunch of honestly 4chan stands coming after me because I don't have any problem with the tool communities, but the ends as a means just doesn't serve healthcare. And so that's why I'm saying community is your immunity has to be specific to healthcare. Does that answer the question, Preethy?
Absolutely. No, this is great. And we have a couple more questions and we can take those two quickly. I'll take one question on balancing the growing demands on professional, familial, and personal spheres. I know we all have our ways to balance. I have a very interesting framework for that, and thanks for that question. Is time, energy, and emotion are three things that are very critical, I see, as what I need to manage to have that balance. And I'll start with energy and emotion, right? When our energy is high, we are able to do things faster than what we can do if our energy is low. And same thing, if our emotions are positive and our state of mind is positive, then we will be able to be a better leader and better manager and work with teams much more effectively. And that all leads to time, right? Because, time is so it's so nebulous in the sense that the same time might seem very fast for one person versus a slow for another instance, right? Another person. So by managing your energy and emotion, which is what we do with all these breath work and all these silencing the mind techniques that all of us were talking about, and as a result, it helps us to become better at balancing the growing demands. So I'll quickly ask if anybody has a very quick point, and then we'll take the final question on that balance. Does anybody else wants to add?
Preeti, I think I must say that I totally agree and I like what you said. And I truly believe that, when we have a lot of positivity and the positive attitude and will actually fill in a lot of happiness. And happy people tend to be a lot more productive. Right. And so one of the things I always tell is that be happy what you do. It doesn't matter whether we're doing a task A or B. Nothing is wrong, nothing is inferior or to any other and kind of thing. And to show that, I mean, as long as you're able to show every member what they're doing, how it translates to the overall corporate vision, whatever the work little, it doesn't matter whether it is little, small, big and kind of thing. If it is, we can show them how it actually impacts the overall organization goals. They're actually going to be a lot more happy. They're going to be a lot more productive. But the key to everything is being happy. And happiness lies within oneself. We cannot be happy or unhappy because of, we think that it is because of something else, maybe an external stimuli, or maybe a manager, supervisor, customers, family. No, it doesn't happen. It's all because of you. Either you choose to be happy or unhappy. And to do that, if you're constantly thinking about positive things, positive attitude, don't try to get any negativity impact you. I think you're going to be happy.
Mm. Yeah, great. You literally that you're talking about how to break out of the victim mindset and get into leadership and take responsibility for our own how we feel, right? Great insight, Bhaskar. I know we can keep talking, for hours and hours out here. I would like to highlight to the audience here. I posted a link for a survey. It's a 1-minute survey If you can all go to that link, I'll post it again. And we would love your inputs on what you want to hear from, we want to do this at least once every quarter. So if you can put your input, and I want to share something very special, right? We have for this group here, for 10 people who want to select that, on a first come, first serve basis, we are going to offer a 30-minute session for your team for TLEX, right? So for folks that are interested, indicate in the survey. We come and lead a session for 30 minutes. And I have personally led these sessions on different topics such as managing emotions during stress or how to cultivate organizational resilience and different topics. We have like about 15 topics or so that we can talk to you about, and then you can select the right one for your team, and we can come and talk to you about a 30-minute session that can help you understand how you can then make this as part of your team's exercise. I think one of the questions was, how do you make it a regular practice? This is one of the ways by which we want to make this part of your team. With that, I will quickly walk through about TLEX, because I know we talked about a little bit on TLEX, but do stay on. We will get final comments from all the speakers before we go, but I will just take 2 minutes to talk to you about what these sessions are that we are offering. TLEX, Transformation Leadership for Excellence, is focused on helping you build more resilient teams, build a centered leadership style. And we've been around in more than 500 organizations. We've taught 200,000 employees. As you can see, a lot of big brands as well as startups have actually used TLEX as a way to teach these breathing techniques and sustainable practices for their teams to build themselves. And this is what we offer. To start with the self-mastery, right? Bhaskar talked about that also, right? How do you talk about self-mastery and then moving on to the collaboration and trust that we talked about with Sherri and Arun mentioned that, and then also the ability to vision and change things at overall organization level. We're able to also deliver different levels of training for executives, for middle managers, staff, any level. We come and do these trainings. And we have offered the immersion retreat, which is like a 3-session workshop, as well as 60-minute inner workshop and tailored offerings for everybody. So that is a little bit about TLEX, and I will drop my email on the chat window so that you can also connect with us. Before we go, I'd like to ask each of the panelists to share one final insight. What else do you think we can share with the audience here to practice centered leadership? I'll start with Arun.
Great. First and foremost, thanks again for organizing this. This has been a fascinating conversation and also wonderful to see the questions coming in. I'll say 2 things, right? So first and foremost, there's been a lot of talk about the disruption that AI is going to cause to lives everywhere. Like, doesn't matter what your job function is, doesn't matter where you live, it's going to touch you in one way, shape, or form. I'm actually far more optimistic about the positive impact of that, partly because of the amount of time that is going to get freed up from people's day-to-day drudgery. Like, just imagine the amount of time we used to spend on things that may not necessarily be adding value. Now, you can not only eliminate that completely, almost completely, but also have meaningful learning opportunities almost on a daily basis. I'll give you an example of that. Like, I'm a scientist by training. Like, it's been years since I actually had an opportunity to dive deep into a topic to get to a point where I can write a research paper. These days, pretty routinely in an 8-hour flight, I can have a 4-hour conversation with multiple models on topics that are so esoteric that maybe a few hundred PhD students in the world would care about. But that conversation is deep enough to be had over maybe a 2-month, 3-month long period with your advisor if you're normally doing a PhD coursework. Now, that's the kind of deeply enriching work that I haven't been able to do for at least 10 years. just because I have to go do all the other stuff that I have to do running a business. To me, that's deeply personal, deeply enriching in a way that I've not been able to do. Like that, if maybe you like writing poems, maybe you like music, maybe you like reading about history, you can have an interaction at a level that is deeply enriching, that has not been possible before. And most of my conversations are over a very weak Wi-Fi onto multiple systems that are more or less free. So that's actually an opportunity that is about living life in a lot more enriched fashion. That's a lot more energizing to me. And it's a positive message I want to leave with people. Another thing I want to add to the happiness conversation that both Sherri and Bhaskar mentioned is if you're curious really about a particular book that changed my perspective about happiness quite a bit, is The Happiness Advantage by Sean Acker. He also has an awesome 17-minute TED Talk. It's both funny and deeply insightful. If you've not watched it, it's definitely worth your time to go watch. And thanks again for the opportunity, Preethy.
Thank you, Arun. I will quickly take inputs from Sherri.
Yeah, thank you. So because I'm very passionate about resilience, and I share Arun's excitement for a lot of advancement that we can get AI, but I think that we also have to get it right, and we don't have that much time to get it right. We have a small window, and so I want to balance Arun's comments around the excitement of the enrichment and the fun that we can have, but make sure that we allocate time to making sure that we get it right while we can, because that window is actually closing. And so, for example, an area that I work in that I'm deeply passionate about is making sure that we execute in medicine to help alleviate some of the burnout with the physicians, and making sure that we have reliability, that we have traceability, that we have overrides for the clinicians, that we have fallbacks, so that it's accurate, so that we can be proud of the work, that we have very little time to get that right. And so what I would say is that resilience, that if you are able to do the work, I go after it. Right now is the time to really go after it. But when I say don't be afraid to fail, I mean, you want to start with failure. Don't be afraid to talk about it. And you should start expecting to fail and engineer failure modes, effects, and analysis into your systems. Like the C-suite and the board does not want to talk to you unless you bring that to them. They do not have time, and they are under tremendous pressure. So that is my message to everybody who thinks they want to be in healthcare. Like, unless you have done that work, they do not have time. They are under tremendous pressure right now. And so if you are as brilliant as I think Preethy's friends are, that's my message to you. And if you are ready to do the real work, we have all the top people coming to AI Med, which is where people who are physicians go to get certified, board certified, just like any other specialty, November 10th through 12th. And all the top people that it's multidisciplinary to deliver real outcomes for patients, families, organizations, to drive real results, as well as returns. Because unless you have capital and resources, none of this works. So driving that for investors, they're all going to be there at the Grand Hyatt in San Diego. And so if you're excited by driving real results and getting real work done, come to San Diego in November.
Thank you. Now, appreciate the recommendations to the books and the events. Bhaskar, quick final word before we close.
First of all, thank you very much, Preethy and the TLEX team. It's been an amazing discussion. I really enjoyed listening to the other fellow panelists, and also the interesting questions what our other participants have been writing in the chat window. I think just to summarize, the biggest challenge I feel that most of the enterprise today face is the shrinking decision window, right? Because of, you can talk about the information explosion, because of the availability of information on fingertips, which was not there before, or at least in terms of that. So We are at a stage where, whether you like it, like Arun mentioned, whether you like it or not, we have to be what you call surrounded by or train ourselves, equip ourselves to be AI literate, right? And by forcing is not something which you will really enjoy or you will actually get the benefit of it. But by loving it, I think by lovingly adopting it and adapting to it, we will actually make a meaningful progress and growth into that. And that's something which I also observe. I mean, Arun mentioned, right? By forcing something as a tool or technology to the team, it has not worked. We also seen that, in different organizations we try to do, even including ChatGPT. One of the places, I mean, we have been trying to push every employee said, anything you want to do, first check with ChatGPT, ask it. I mean, it can do a lot of work for you and then start working on it. Seems easy, but it is not that easy to go ahead and push it through and make them do it. They have to genuinely like it, love it. Only then they can start actually making it. So love your work, guys. Be happy. I think that's the only way. I always tell the same. You're happy. You love what you're doing. You're going to be a lot more productive. You're going to be on the top of it. Doesn't matter whether you succeed or not. It's only a perception, a point of view. At the end, you're going to be happy.
Love it. Great, great ending. Let's all be happy and healthy and also, learn new techniques by which we can be centered. Thank you everybody for joining. Do take the survey. And if you did not get a chance, we will also email the survey link to you. Thank you for coming today.
Preethy, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Preethy. Thanks, Arun, Sherri.
Thank you, Bhaskar and Arun.
Amazing listening to you both.
Yeah, thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Yeah, very grateful.
Thank you, Preethy.
Action.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.